Um, Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We are delighted to present to you another event hosted by the Global Youth, this College Admissions webinar. Now we're going to introduce our panelists. Who are joining us today. If our panelists can briefly introduce themselves by stating their name, year, college of attendance, and major, and one fun fact about your.
Yeah, I can start. I'm Francine. I'm a senior at Wharton studying business analytics and management. Fun fact, I don't know if I can do it anymore, but I used to be able to solve a Rubik's Cube in like 40 seconds. So I think that's cool. I'll popcorn it to Patricia.
Thank you. My name is Patricia. I'm currently a junior at Cornell. I'm in the College of Industrial Labor Relations. And I guess this is not really fun because I'm assuming all of us are in New York City, but I've lived in like Brooklyn my entire life. And I've never been to the Bronx, which is a shame. I guess I'll pass it off to Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a first year at EL studying EP&E, Ethics, Politics, and Economics. I'm also a Koch Scholar. And a fun fact about me is my college reaction video interesting. So I finally posted one my senior year and it didn't go super viral, but it got like over 200,000 views, which was definitely more than I was anticipating. So that's a fun fact about me. And I'll pass it off to Clara.
Hi, I'm Clara. I graduated from U Chicago in 2018, so I might be the oldest person here, and now I'm in grad school, so happy to talk about that as well. And I guess a fun fact about me is, I don't know, I never know what to say for these. I don't know, this is weird, but I eat a lot of soup. Like I eat soup every single day for lunch, so that's my fun fact. And I guess hopefully I'm not mispronouncing this, but Mihail should be the last one to go.
Thanks, Clara. It's pronounced Mikhail. Hi, everyone. I'm Mikhail. I'm a freshman at Princeton, majoring in CS. I guess a fun fact, my birthday is actually tomorrow. I'll be turning 19.
Nice, good to hear. And also, if all the panelists could put like their the college of their attendance after the name, that'd be great. But yeah, next slide, please. Awesome, thanks so much. Before we get started, we would like to introduce you to the sponsor of this webinar, the Global Youth Economics Forum. The Global Youth Economics Forum aims to empower, inspire, and ignite interest in business, economics, finance, and marketing. We arrange events to connect students with professionals in these fields, and we also expanded by hosting monthly career spotlight workshops that feature professionals from fields that are not limited to business, finance, and economics. And by doing so, we hope to jumpstart students' professional lives. And we also host free college admissions webinars like this one. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to jump into our questions. I categorize this slideshow by category, so it's not really by whoever filled out the form first, just so I thought it was more neat that way. So the first question was, what made you choose your college and major?
Yeah, I can start off again. So I always knew that I wanted to be in business, but I also had a lot of interests in other things. And so I chose Wharton because one, my brother went there and he said that the curriculum was really flexible. So even though I'm getting a degree in economics, it's really flexible. Like I'm still able to fulfill my interest in folklore and art and film and take a bunch of classes in that. And so that's why I chose Wharton. And I chose business analytics and entrepreneurship. I chose business analytics mainly because it's like, you know, I feel like I had to throw in something quant there if I'm being completely honest. And I just like the entrepreneurship space, like all the people that I meet and the work that you do. So yeah, that's why I chose my major. And I guess Patricia, you could go.
Yeah. So I think my major is very interesting because I'm in the College of Industrial Labor Relations, but we only have one major in the college. And it's the only, I assume it's the only college like that or major like that ever. And it's only exclusive to Cornell. And I always have trouble trying to articulate what it really means. But it's essentially, it's like really multifaceted, honestly. Like there is like the specific interest in like labor and unions, but honestly I know so many people in my major that do a lot of different things. Like there's a lot of kids who do business or like sociology or political science, but particularly for me, I always was interested in law. I'm planning to go to law school right after grad, apply to anything, and a lot of ILR grads go apply to law school right after. And I honestly think like even if I do end up not choosing to go to law school or become a lawyer, there's so like our curriculum is so again like flexible. There's so many classes that you can take like in that realm that you can essentially apply it to like essentially anything because it is so specific. And honestly, a lot of people like have a lot of questions about this major. And I guess that's why I particularly chose it, because I think even if I want to do law, there's also a lot of room to do other things as well.
I can go. So I guess a little bit different. So I chose U Chicago because they had a core curriculum, which meant that you had to take like anyone had to take a bio class, you had to take math classes, you had to take humanity, you had to take all of the above. And when I was in high school, I had like some kind of sense of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure. And I wanted that foundation. So that was honestly part of a big reason of why I wanted to go there. And then eventually I ended up majoring in psych and bio and a weird thing that U Chicago has that's called comparative human development, which is like a combination of sociology and anthro and psych and bio. But for me, it was mostly because I wanted to go into neuroscience. And at the time, they didn't have a neuro major. So I kind of made it myself by combining all those things together. But now they do have a neuro major for anyone that's considering applying. But yeah.
I'll go next. I was deciding between 3 schools. When I finally decided upon Yale, I was deciding between Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, which is like a really good decision to have. And so I knew that I really wanted to study something along the political realm, and I wasn't too interested in Harvard's like government program. So that was kind of out. And I also grew up in the Bay Area, so I know how kind of STEM infested it is here. So I wasn't really thinking that Stanford was going to be too government focused. And so that's a major reason I did choose Yale. Super excited. I'm kind of deciding between EP&E and like a political science BA MA right now, but they have like the best professors in the world. Obviously, they've kind of like taken over the 21st century presidencies, at least before the last couple. And so it's really cool to go there. They have a lot of resources, and it's been really, really good for my major.
I'm not sure if everyone can relate, but personally for me, I know this is unusual, but for both deciding college and major is actually a really easy decision. I'll start off with major. I've always been like a math and problem solving guy, and I know a lot of high schools, like not every high school like offers computer science. So I was lucky to go to a high school that had like a computer science course for every year. So I did that and I just really enjoyed it. So that's why I'm doing CS. And then uh for colleges, that was also an easy choice because I don't know, for my college process, like I had no confidence in myself. So I applied to like way too many safeties. So then I was shocked because I only applied to like a handful of each schools. I actually got denied by all of them except for Princeton. So it was by far like the best academic choice. And then it ended up being the cheapest choice as well. So it was like the best of both worlds.
Thank you all for your contributions. Our next question is, how are you able to stand out to colleges? Do you have a certain quote unquote spike, or were you well-rounded? And what were your extracurriculars and academic courses?
Oh man. Okay, so interestingly, I actually asked Penn for my admissions file. I don't know if anyone else here has done that, but it's pretty interesting. Like, they don't put a lot on your admissions file. It's literally just a calculation of your SAT, your SAT2, and your GPA and rank. And like, that's how they basically calculate like what your number is. And if you like meet that cutoff, and everything else that you do is just additional points on top of that. So that was really interesting to me because I'm like, wow, I'm so special. I got into this college, but then I got this file and it's literally just like, you're a number. That's why I got in. But anyway, that's kind of like the dark side of it. But I would say the most important part, oh, this is the next question, never mind. At least for extracurricular wise, I was really into speech and debate and I dedicated a lot of time to that. And I wrote a lot about that in my essay. So definitely like showed the passion there. Was involved in a bunch of other things too, but mostly those were like resume patterns, you could say. And I would, if I could go back and change that, I would say like just focus on speech and debate, like the thing that I was really passionate about, and maybe add like a couple of things that I was also passionate about. But definitely just hone in on that like one thing that you're super passionate about would be my advice.
I guess I kind of relate to Michaela in some ways where initially I wasn't very confident in like just like my application in general. Honestly, I applied to a lot of small liberal arts colleges, and then Cornell was one of the only big school I really applied to. But I think in terms of standing out to colleges, I guess it's like I feel like I always had an interesting like education career because I went to Brooklyn Tech, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but in Brooklyn Tech you have majors, and my major was law and society. So for literally like 3 years of my high school, I was very focused on like a specific set of like academic courses, which is mainly like humanities, like law, a lot of that. So then I always had like a leaning towards it. So I guess I always assumed, I never asked for my application, but I always assumed that I kind of played into that a lot, where in all my like applications or like even my essays, I always mentioned like these like very specific classes that were offered in my high school and how much they interest me and how much like that compelled me to apply to that certain school. So it also fit in really well with Cornell's RLR program, because a lot of the classes I took in high school kind of correlated with like the college classes I'd be taking. So I really played into that a lot. And I even like talked to a lot, like before applying to Cornell, I even like talked to like a lot of like Cornell like professors, or like just emailed, try to find out, or Cornell students try to find out like if would I be a good fit and stuff. So I honestly kind of honed in on that and kind of created a narrative for like my application. I wouldn't say I was like the best high school student, to be honest. I would feel like my grades were pretty like average, but I think if anything, I feel like me kind of emphasizing this like one specific passion and just like kind of like telling everyone that like this is what I've been wanting to do since I was 15, and just playing into that a lot. Yeah, so that's basically it.
I can go next. How did I stand out? This question was really peculiar to me when I was in high school, just because I knew that like stereotypically people were like president of their class or president of their school, and like I had nothing of that. No nonprofit like that I made, no book that I wrote, no president of the school, not varsity captain or anything like that. And so for me, it was really like halfway through high school, I kind of like quit all of those extracurriculars that were pretty stereotypical to like being admitted to these big colleges. Like I quit student government, didn't really play, like I was playing varsity rugby, didn't do that. And so I would say like really do go with your gut, and don't be afraid to fail. I failed a lot in like little things that like I look back on and like, there like I shouldn't have been rejected from that, like I was qualified, and like you kind of just have to let that like roll off your shoulders, and realize that there are going to be people that are so excited to have you. And I think my biggest advice would be to kind of like reach for the stars. Like I remember my senior year, I was like 16, and I was just like, oh, I learned about work, and I was like, I want to write an article in primaries, and I emailed like Teen Vogue, and I started writing for Teen Vogue when I was 16. Literally just by emailing them. I didn't even know anyone. And so that was kind of my experience with a lot of my extracurriculars. Like I emailed my way onto Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, Biden's presidential campaign. And so like that's that. I think that's my last thing. It's cold emailing. Really works if you're really passionate about what you're emailing about.
I can go next, and I actually can talk about the cold emailing as well. So when I was in high school, if I'm honest, like I didn't have the best grades by any means, but I had a lot of extracurriculars, and kind of what other people were saying, they're all things that were all in like the same realm of ideas. So I did a lot of like teaching and like education work because I cared about that. And I played, like I was a 3-season athlete, but the main one was that my high school was lucky enough to have like a science research program, which I think some schools have, some don't. I think Hunter does. But I did that all 4 years, and the general gist behind it was that we would do a project within school, and then we would present at a bunch of local conferences. And then the summer before my senior year, which I think is what stood out, was that I actually went and worked at a lab up at Harvard, and I worked there for the whole summer, and then I published that research, and then I went and presented and whatever. But in terms of cold emails, I think like I emailed, I want to say like 132 labs, of which like 8 people answered, and then like I ended up going to one. So people kept saying, "Oh, just like give up, you're not gonna do it, just like whatever." But I ended up finally going to one, and it worked out well. So yeah, the cold emails really work, and I think being in that research program was probably like what made me kind of like pick my majors and like pick what I was interested in college and there afterwards. Um, so that was my side of it.
That's a awesome story, Clara. I can't personally relate because my high school is actually one that also offered science research, and I applied but ended up getting denied. But I actually think that actually worked out really well because instead of having like a spike, I would say I was way more like well rounded, and by not doing science research, that just allowed me time to do like a bunch of other things and take more like courses that I enjoyed. I would say for academic courses, I always made sure to like challenge myself. I always took like the honors or AP ones. I took computer science, like I mentioned, every year. I also am a bit interested in business, so I took a couple business classes, and then I had a bunch of extracurriculars. I'd say the three main ones I did was I did do student government. I was a senator the first 2 years, and then class president the last two. I did cross country and track year round for all 4 years of high school, and then end of sophomore year, I started working at like this local pizza place that I actually still work to this day. So I would say those are my main extracurriculars.
Okay, so our next question is Camilla, next slide. What is the most important part of the college admissions process, and which do you think is the hardest part?
I would definitely say for me, it was the essay portion. It took me a long time to think about what my story was and how to tell it in like a really good way. So I think that would honestly be simultaneously the most important and the hardest part. And my advice for that is literally just reach out to everyone that you know and ask them to read your essay, to bounce ideas off of each other, because that definitely really helped me nail down exactly what I wanted to write about.
I definitely agree with Francine. I feel like if you're ever worried about your SAT score, I'm here to tell you, at least for me, it was like slightly okay. It worked out in the end because I had a very average SAT score, and like that was super discouraging, and also the reason why I was like less ambitious with my college choices and applying. And I definitely agree. The essay, as I would feel, is what saved me 100%. And honestly, I don't even think it's hard because you have to distinguish yourself, but I don't necessarily think you have to like be a 1 in a million like story. Like I didn't live in another country. Like I didn't do like I didn't do like life-changing things. But I honestly like wrote like very basic and like kind of stupid topics for my essay. And I still to this day, I want to read it again and just wonder how it worked out that way. But yeah, I honestly do think don't procrastinate on it. Like brainstorm, at least write down like ideas, because I guess like one of the methods I used to write my essay was I kind of just not even things that make you necessarily unique, but things that you're passionate about, just like write a list, and you have to choose topics that you can talk for hours about. So I guess I'm gonna be a little TMI, but like I wrote my essay about makeup. Like I literally wrote about like how much I love makeup, and that was something I can talk about for hours for. And you know, it's not necessarily unique, but it's the way you write it. So honestly, revision is like number one. It's like the key.
I will agree with that 100%. Like everybody that I've ever met read my essays. And that's not even an exaggeration, unfortunately. Like and all of my recommenders read it, counselor, parents, siblings, people who were in the activity that I wrote my essay about, like really having them ingest it with like more details, I feel like is really valuable. I would actually say that extracurriculars are the most important just because I think it's really difficult for you to like have a lot of lived experience, or not difficult for you to have a lot of lived experience, but like I wrote my essay about one of my primary extracurriculars that like I felt like I wanted to explain a little bit more. And I feel like if you have taken on like some really cool things, like that's going to stand out to them. And I think that, um, for example, with Patricia's essay would probably be worth nothing if it weren't for the girl that Patricia was, you know? So you kind of have to have some substance there, even though having passions is really good. I think that you need to have some substance in terms of your extracurriculars. And I think that they'd be more likely to accept somebody who was just like off the charts with extracurriculars and was really evident that they were committed to their community and to making a difference. And then their essays were like not the best because it's obvious that you can kind of glean things from extracurriculars, although not necessarily as vividly as essays. So I'd say that was the most important part in my college admissions process. The hardest part for me, I think, was testing. Not because it was like difficult, but because like I felt like that was the most stressful thing because like there's no good and bad like extracurriculars. At least I didn't feel like there were. And then I felt like there was a lot of pressure in my community for like a good SAT score for certain schools or a bad SAT score for certain schools. So I feel like that was where I felt a lot of pressure because it's really easy for you to see yourself as a dot and like niche, which is not comparable, of course, when you have really diverse extracurriculars or achievements or life experience.
I think I was also most stressed out about scores than anything else because I felt like I could do better always, even if it was good enough. Like I still always was worried that there are people that were going to be better. And I think I was also stressed out about my essays. And if both of those, important thing that I now realize looking back is that you don't like they can tell if you're trying to be someone that you're not. So if you're writing about how like you care about global peace, and like I'm sure you do, there's like 50 other people that are writing the exact same thing, and you kind of just want to focus in on like what actually makes you special or what thought process or what experiences that you've had that you stand out with, as opposed to like trying to be like the mold that you think that they want you to be, if that makes sense. So yeah, so like tuning into whatever extracurriculars you may have is probably like a really good way to work on your essays. And I actually have gone back and read my essays for the different schools that I applied to. And if I'm honest, there are a lot of cases where I was definitely trying way too hard. And if I was an admissions counselor now, I'd be like, what is this girl doing? So I think that's like a thing you kind of want to keep in mind. Excuse me. But I also, something that I think was good that I did was that I like try to write in like a unique way. And in some cases it was definitely bad, but like I would maybe like have like a conversation in my essays, or not just like have like a when I was 5 I did this type of opening. And I think in some cases it kind of worked out.
I definitely agree with everything that's been said so far. I completely agree. I think that the essay is like the most important part because I think that's where you can really like stand out from other applicants. For me, I would say the hardest part is uh staying like on time with like staying ahead of deadlines and everything because I'm just like I know some people spend a lot of time like prepping their college essays. My main college essay, I did actually like go over with an English teacher and he spent like 2 weeks on it. My Princeton supplemental, like the entire supplement, I didn't start until like I think it was 2 hours before the deadline. I was actually at a friend's house, so we were all just hanging out and they were all watching a movie. I was just sitting like in between them, just typing away on this laptop. But Patricia like worded it perfectly. Like if you pick something that you're like really passionate about, then write about is like comes so naturally. And you like the topic for the Princeton supplement was just it was very simple. It was just like write about someone who's like influenced you in a significant way. And before I even knew it, I like reached the max word count in like only like 30 minutes, and the essay actually came out like pretty good. So by just like choosing something you're really passionate about, like writing the essay isn't such a daunting task as it might like seem to be.
Thanks so much, Jordan. Our next question was, do you guys have any tips for students regarding extracurricular activities or like just showing like leadership and passion during this time, like during COVID?
Actually, okay, before I answer this specific question, like for COVID, I know like a lot of us have been talking about like passion and stuff. And I'm thinking back to when I was a senior and I was thinking like, okay, like what even are my passions? I don't know if any of you are at that state right now, but you're like trying to figure out what is my story? Who am I? How can I portray like what I'm actually passionate about? And I think just having conversations with my family members and like thinking about how I like to do things more so than the things that I did, because like a lot of things that I did, like speech and debate, a lot of other kids did too, but it was like the time and the effort and how I thought about it that I think really helped me find, I guess, like what I was actually passionate about. I don't know if that makes any sense, but anyway, this question, yeah, I think I don't really know how high school is working, I guess like virtually. I don't know if it would be any different like in terms of like activities and leadership unless like those are cut out. And if they're cut out, I would just suggest like finding things that you're passionate about outside of like academia. Like you could be really passionate about gardening, or maybe like rescuing animals. I don't know. But talking about that is equally as valid as talking about something in terms of academics.
Yeah, again, I totally agree. I would say in terms of answering the COVID question, obviously this is like it stunts a lot of activities that could be done, and obviously in person like collaboration is always better. But I would say in a way utilize COVID like where it's like you can essentially be anywhere at any time now. So I've like personally for me, I've found opportunities that in cities that I wouldn't necessarily take because everything's so remote. So if you this could be a chance to branch out into like other opportunities that you can just see online like randomly, or like in terms of internships, but also maybe like be a little bit more ambitious during this time. Maybe you feel like you can now take in more responsibilities, I guess, if you're up for it, because you don't necessarily have to leave the comfort of your own home. But that's all to your comfort level. But it's just honestly having that mindset where it's like, okay, like we're in this situation, so what can I do to utilize it the most, you know? And it just and overall in my extracurricular activities, I didn't really touch upon it, but I would say I wasn't really the most ambitious with extracurriculars. I wasn't in any sports, honestly. And in leadership positions, I like honestly like I always agree with doing something that kind of makes you that something you actually want to do, because I feel like a lot of times when high schoolers kind of want to do clubs or want to be a leadership and be in a leadership position, they kind of go above and beyond. They have to either be like, oh, I'm like president of like the Model UN or something. Like things are obviously impressive and they won't harm you, but sometimes it's like it wouldn't hurt to have something that can start a conversation. Because I just remember like something where I was president of my poetry club, and I remember I like excluded that from like every like in my high school resume. I excluded that, and then I just remember a question where my like where I was interviewing the guy was just like, actually, and then I told him like I was president of the poetry club, and he was like, that's cool, like that starts a conversation, you know. So I'd say there are no limits. Like, don't limit yourself to something on the lens of just like what would look good on my resume, because you honestly would never know what actually looks good. And sometimes you later or not, like even in jobs or just like applying to like college applications, like just something that's like interesting and just uniquely you could be far more compelling than just like these very like big organizations or like something that's like seems so extravagant.
I would agree. Something else I remember, I was a high schooler during the like Harvard scandal where they released their how they graded all of their applicants, I guess. And so I remember spending like 1 hour one day just like reading through that. And something that struck me was how recommenders are like rated and how your recommendations are rated based off of like the student is like the best of my lifetime, like the student is the best of the year, like da da da. So another goal that I had for myself that I felt like distinguished myself against my like classmates was I had really strong relationships with my teachers. And I feel like during COVID, this is going to be a time when it's really easy for you to be disconnected from your teachers. So especially if you are a sophomore or a junior, like this is the time for you to like go above and beyond because teachers are probably not experiencing that right now. They're definitely having a lot of students that are disengaged. And so this is really an opportunity for you to set yourself apart and show that you are really passionate because when they're writing those letter of recommendations, it's going to be a lot better, especially when the margins between two students at schools are really like small. If you have a really strong recommendation, that really reflects on who you are and your tenacity during a pandemic.
Yeah, so I feel like everyone before me has given really good advice about what you can do to kind of work around COVID. So what I do want to say is that as much as you should definitely push yourself and be able to work if the pandemic as much as possible, there also like I think schools are very much aware of the fact that it is a pandemic and there's things that you can't do. So for instance, like I played sports, like I'm assuming sports practice, I don't know, but I'm assuming you can't like all be in like an indoor track right now, right? Or like if you are in the research lab, like I'm assuming you can't do those types of things, and schools are very much aware of that and taking that into consideration. So I don't think that you should necessarily like take that and feel really bad about yourself and realize that like basically it's a global pandemic. So if you have certain things that are on your that aren't on your resume and you feel like they should be there, everyone understands that. That being said, I also think that now that we are all home, maybe spending more time like working on your essays could be something that actually other students previously may have not had as much time for, and that could be really good and could help you with your applications. Also, yes, building relationships with your teachers would be really good. And also, I think a lot of clubs and also like internship programs are moving towards having online programs, and that could be really great. So when I was in college, for instance, I did a really random internship with a tech company in Kenya. And there's those types of opportunities, and that could be something that you could look into now. That you probably wouldn't have had time for if it wasn't a pandemic. But also, as I said, it is a pandemic. So if you aren't doing certain things, or if you don't have Wi-Fi at home, or if like your situation's hard, like I don't think you should like, just do as much as you can within your capacity.
I completely agree. I think colleges are definitely becoming like way more understanding of the situations. I think like most universities are becoming like test optional because of the circumstances. It's hard for me to think of a specific tips because a lot of my activities, like I mentioned, like sports and working, and then like student government. Like one of our biggest thing was setting up like fundraisers as these like big events, which obviously can't be held. So I'd say like in a time when like a lot of like group activities like aren't allowed, it might be time to like become more like independent, like find your passion, and like you'll have more time like for yourself and like to explore all these like different opportunities. So I think in the end, like it's important to just remember that like even though like these terrible circumstances are like happening to you, it's like happening to everyone else. So it is like a even playing field in a sense. And if you put in the effort and time, you can definitely like
Thanks so much. The next question was, do you guys have any tips for international students? If not, it's fine.
Um, Lena, were there any like specifications to this question? Like tips for applying to colleges or what?
I think like applying to colleges.
Well, I guess I'm not an international student, but I do have a lot of international students as friends. I think they're really cool. Whoever wrote this question, if you want to like be more specific, feel free to like message Lena. Anyone else can take the floor. I really don't have any other tips, I guess.
I can jump in. I think that online forums are so useful. I unfortunately was really a big fan of like applying to college. I think it was A2C when I was a senior, and that was really useful for me when things came up. I remember I think Francine, you go to Penn, right?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so Penn had like a fly-in program, and I was able to like find that literally on Reddit and apply to that, and Penn flew me out for free to visit their school. So they tend to have a lot of really good resources, and tend to know a little bit about curves and what, like you're not alone, even if you are not in the US. And so I think that that's a really good resource. Um, and I would also recommend I've had this experience with like religious groups at Yale where we have some internationals asked to join like our group meetings and stuff, but reaching out to like the international groups at those schools can also be a resource because they can kind of help you out if you have any individual questions about the transition or whatnot.
Yeah, that actually just reminded me, if this question was like like I'm scared because I won't find my community type of question, like at least for Penn, the international community is huge. Like you'll definitely find people here and everyone's like always willing to help out. So yeah, just wanted to throw that in there. Not sure if it's helpful, but just wanted to throw it in.
Thanks, everyone. Our next question is, do you guys kind of have like a breakdown of what like at each grade level what students should do, like freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors?
Oh man, I think, okay, so at least in my personal experience, I explored a lot of what I liked as a freshman, just like basically explored everything. Did music, like I mentioned before, speech and debate. Skating was huge in my town, so I also did that. I come from a really small town, so I was like able, fortunately, to do like a lot of things. And then sophomore year, I kind of cut out like a few of those things. And it was basically just like a elimination process until I was a senior and basically just doing speech and debate. So game plan for freshmen, basically explore everything. Sophomore, maybe start trying to looking for like other opportunities, maybe like get a job. I worked at a chocolate factory, so strange, but I honestly really enjoyed it. It taught me like, what earning money is like. And I bought my first MacBook from like a whole semester's worth of like chocolate making. So that felt really good. Junior year was kind of tough because it was like studying all the time for tests and stuff, but I think that definitely paid off. And then senior year, I applied early to Penn and fortunately got in. So it was very chill. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I feel like mine was a very typical like high school experience. I'm gonna be real. I knew that like colleges didn't really care about freshmen or like half of sophomore year. So I like I wouldn't recommend this. This is just solely me, but I went in being like, this is not gonna matter until like junior year. I just cared about like getting at least like decent grades. And so I think like honestly, I think it's really harsh to hound down on 14-year-olds and be like, think about college. I say just like try to get the best grades you can because cumulative GPAs like do matter. So freshman, sophomore year, I mainly just focus on getting my GPA up, and sophomore year I guess I started picking up extracurriculars, but again just things I genuinely liked, like poetry. Junior year is when things started to get serious, so I tried to, my school was very handy in giving out like in having like this sort of database for high schoolers to find internships from like our network, from our alumni network. So that's when I started picking up my first like real like internship, and it was something tailored to again like what I liked. So I picked up a legal internship at an entertainment agency junior year. And then senior year, I picked up again another like internship that was like similar. So I would say junior, like again, it's kind of like a funnel where it's like freshman year have wide interests, but then as you get older, like narrow it down to things you really want to do, and kind of always have like, I guess like my whole thing was like having a narrative. So as I got older, I focused on crafting this narrative about myself and like what I want to present to colleges. And I would say honestly, for a freshman, always again, like you don't have to stress so much about it. But I would say like junior year, it's mainly just like again getting, that's when grades matter the most. But I hope this was helpful. I mean, this is just like to kind of be realistic and being like, you don't have to have your plan figured out by the age of 15. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, thanks so much. Our next question was, do you guys have any tips for college essays and how to get recommendation letters that accurately show who you are? And how do you go about brainstorming ideas for a college essay? I think we touched on this a bit, but maybe to kind of expand more.
Olivia, I feel like this is your question.
Yeah, I had some really cool letters of rec. Oh, wait, okay, there we go. I'll be really brief. Tips for writing letters of rec. Highlight anything that you did, like in that class that was unique, or that you, especially struggles that you had. I was like, LOL, I ended up with an A in your class, but I literally got an F on one of your tests. So that's pretty impressive, you know? And so highlighting your failures, highlighting if you came after class and you talked to your professor. For me, I had an A-push teacher. Why am I saying professor? I had an A-push teacher who I talked to a lot, talked to him about things, and I talked to him about those discussions in my letter of rec request. That's what I would recommend. And then for college essays, I watched so many YouTube videos. It's kind of insane. I remember when I was like looking at Stanford, if anybody knows who the Kath Path is, she's like a college YouTuber for Stanford, but she followed me briefly before I didn't commit there, and I was like freaking out. But yeah, I would watch some of them. They're kind of good, not to adult influence what you actually write about, but really to kind of show like the caliber and the real creativity that people write. Like I wrote like a song for one of my Stanford essays. Like just be creative and take risks, because they certainly don't want to see a basic essay.
I can go. I think one thing is to make sure, like if you have a big extracurricular, I think it would actually be good to have like maybe 2 teacher letter of recs and one from your extracurricular, just to like make you a more like well-rounded human being. And in terms of brainstorming, I kind of touched on this. I had like crazy brainstorming. I was really trying to be creative, and I think I definitely went too far, but I think there's a merit to doing that because, as I said, like they're reading thousands of the same essay, so you really kind of want to stand out with that. I think when I applied to Stanford, I had to write a letter to my future roommate or something. So like that's like an example of a particularly creative one. UChicago itself, if anyone has like looked at their essays, you always have really weird essays every year. Like I think the year I applied, there was like something about a fish that can see like an extra like ray of colors or something. You had to talk about like what your life would be like if you could see extra fish, or you had to compare oranges and apples. Like they have like really weird essays, and I think a lot of schools have that. And I think with those types of things, they really kind of want you to think outside the box, and they're emphasizing that. So definitely take the time to like sit with your essays and like try to workshop them multiple times and try to find people. And also in terms of brainstorming, I kind of touched on this before, but I'm going to emphasize it a million times. Try to actually like write something that matches who you are, and don't try to write towards what you think they want to see, because I think they can usually tell. But yeah.
I guess I can go next. I would say for the recommendation letters, try to give them like as much as possible to work with. I remember one funny moment of senior year. It was like I was just walking through the halls. I saw my cross country coach, Coach Fun, talking with my guidance counselor, Miss Thomas, because like your guidance counselor does Larry's Rex, and she visibly like looked tired. And I was joking to my coach. She was like, I just finished up with Mikhail's letter rec. I'm gonna go to sleep immediately. That took so long. And then for the teachers letters rec, I made sure I ended up doing 3, even though some colleges only allow for 2, just so I had like that one extra in case like a certain college like allowed for more. But every teacher I chose, like I was involved both in the classroom and like outside the classroom. Just to briefly state, there was Miss Perry, my computer science teacher, who I had for 3 years, but I also did coding club with her for like 3 years as well. So I was both in her classes and like came to the meetings. There was Frau Zatteray, my German teacher, who I had for 2 years. I also helped her out with a German exchange program because the teacher who usually does it like retired the year before, and it was just bad timing because the year right after she retired was the year that we did do the German exchange, so she needed a lot of help with that. So I helped her out with that, and then lastly, Mr. Kosho, my honors chem teachers, who that was like one of my favorite classes. And then she also did astronomy club. So I did that for like all 4 years of high school. And I ended up getting appointed as like the president of that club by the end of by like senior year. So for all 3 of those teachers, I didn't just have them as a teacher, I also had them as like a club advisor.
Thank you, everyone. Our next question is, this one's for Clara. How are you able to conduct research at Stanford and get accepted into Dartmouth as a PhD candidate?
This is going to be a very long answer, so I'm going to try to keep it short. And if people have very specific questions, you can feel free to email me. I kind of went into college knowing that I wanted to do research. So I think when I was looking at schools, I didn't really look at liberal arts colleges. I wanted schools that had big research programs. And I guess that's something you may or may not want to think about. And then while I was an undergrad, for people that are like on the STEM-ish route, I definitely recommend getting started. This is really like post application season, but I really recommend getting started in the lab really as early on as you can, and potentially working in multiple. So I had one that I worked in for like 3.5 years of college, and then I worked in 3 other ones, like starting my sophomore or junior year. And I think that was really helpful, but it was mostly because I was trying to get acquainted with like what specific research questions I wanted to figure out, because I think that's the most important thing when you're applying for PhD programs. And then ultimately, when I graduated undergrad, I wanted more experience with specific types of like neuroscience methods, which again, this is very specific and I'm trying to avoid that. But I ultimately ended up going to Stanford because I wanted to work in a specific lab where we were actually recording from inside people's brains, because they had like electrodes put in for surgical reasons. And that was like very specific for that specific research question. And then I applied to a bunch of schools. I got into a couple, and then I chose Dartmouth again for like a very specific research question, a specific lab. And that's what I suggest doing when you're applying to PhD programs. But this is very long down the road. But I guess just like being specific about your research questions, and once you get to college, if you're interested in like the STEM route, to really allow yourself to explore multiple labs and multiple methods, because I think that's what really helped me out. And feel free to email me if you have any specific questions about this kind of stuff.
Thanks, Clara. Our next question is also like for Olivia. How do you win the Coca-Cola scholarship? Do you have any like essay tips, interview tips?
Yeah, sure. So I think at its core, it's really important to emphasize that it is about public service. So you're not going to get too far, even if you have extraordinary extracurriculars, without that like key element of service. Something else that's really cool about this scholarship is I have friends that had average SAT scores. I had friends that like had 1200s, 1300s. I don't know if that's average or if that's slightly above average, but they got in. And so and there are people with really diverse schools too that they went to. So I don't think that you have to be like 99th percentile in terms of your SAT score in order to get in. So they're pretty cool about that. What I'll say is that the first round, something that I learned after and that I was really stressed out about was that it's 100% points based, which is kind of weird, meaning that what you code your extracurriculars as. So like if you're president of the Key Club, you're going to say president and you're going to say like what it is, your extracurriculars, what levels, and it's literally points based for you to get to that second round of semifinalists, which is where you write essays and whatnot. So you really want to make sure that during your first round, you squeeze out like everything that you've ever done. And so even things that you might think are kind of insignificant, I had clubs that I definitely didn't put on my college essay that I did end up putting on this application. And they didn't really come up, but it's really important in you making it past the first interview because you could be fantastic and it's literally computer grading you. So that was something cool to know. And then in terms of interviews, I kind of blacked out during my interview, but you want to look really, really nice. I remember that being something that they told me after. I dressed up a lot. And you want to look really nice. And something else I did was I had a mock interview with a Coke alum. Since I was in the semifinalists, they'd already narrowed it down a lot. And so I reached out to somebody in my area who had won it, and I had a mock interview with them, and they were really useful for that. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to somebody and having them interview you because they kind of understand what values are at the core of that organization.
Yeah, thank you so much. The next question was, these are like more specific. Do leadership positions in student-led nonprofits look good on your college applications?
I think someone who's had experience, can answer.
With my experience, here's what I'll say is that nonprofits, like once you go to one of these schools, I feel like they get a bad rap because unless you're really, really doing it for like a passion, it can be seen as like a resume booster. Something that I found is like a really cool tie between a bunch of people on this panel though is work experience in terms of like working in the food industry. That's something that I see a lot at Yale and like at other schools where there are a lot of people that like worked at KFC. I worked at McDonald's in high school, like which makes it's weird working at McDonald's and then working at like Teen Vogue. But I think that having that quintessential experience really humanizes you and it makes you a lot more of a humble candidate because not every single person that applies to that school has that experience or would want to take on that experience. So I think that that's something that always looks good. Nobody's going to look at you at working at McDonald's or if you worked at a candy shop and be like, oh, that's a really bad extracurricular. I think that that's something where it might be better for you to put your time and you get money so you can be a little bit financially supportive of yourself or of your family.
I agree with what Olivia said. I definitely like, I wouldn't necessarily think I worked at like a nonprofit, but I did like work. I did have leadership positions in like 2 clubs. One was for like women's reproductive rights. It was basically to help like homeless women gain like sanitary pads and feminine products. But another one for mental health awareness. And honestly, like I everyone in my high school is basically doing the same thing. Like they were all like all of a sudden junior year, all these clubs sprung up and everyone's like, oh my God, like, and it does seem like a resume booster. So I would say like, if you are going to participate in something like that, I'm not sure if those were like the breaking point for my application. I don't necessarily think they were, but I would say like, if you're going to be in an organization like that, I noticed a lot of my friends that year who were participating in them, they weren't doing anything. Like it'd be like they have like weekly meetings for like an hour and you just sit there and you like talk. And it was like basically your friend group who was like all of the e-board. And I would say definitely avoid those because I feel like it's very transparent. So like, again, like what Livy said, if you're going to be in an organization like that, you actually have to at least do something. And I say like, there's no problem doing it, but at least try to hold some events. Like for example, like for my club, like we actually would go out to like local charities and donate like feminine hygiene products like every month. Like just having something like a specific like event that you can talk about rather than just being like, oh yeah, we were like discussing like feminism or like discussing this prevalent topic every week for like an hour. Like having an actual like like actually having an actual like evidence to present would be best. But of course, do something that you actually want to do. Don't just do something because it would look good on your resume. And I guess, yeah, I guess having like just actual like just actual events to kind of prove that like your club had some substance is the number one key, I would presume.
Yeah, to add to that, with like in terms of substance, that might be something they're asked at during college interviews. Like sometimes they might say, oh, what clubs were you in? What did you actually do during them? All of that. So you actually want to make sure that you did something, not just like you fake did something. So I guess for me, I don't think I was in any specific like nonprofit for sure, but I did a lot of teaching with kids that were like in underprivileged areas or kids in like my school that were like on the autism spectrum or something. But that was also something that I'd been doing since middle school. So there was like some consistency there and I could talk about it and I had relationships with those students. And to be honest, it wasn't something that I actually wrote about on my application. I guess in retrospect, maybe I should have, but it was just something that I was doing for me. But when it came up during interviews and we talked about it, I mean, I don't actually know, but I'm guessing I seemed interested in it and then maybe it made me like a better candidate. I don't know. But I think you really want it to be something that you're not just doing it as a resume booster because people can see right through that.
Thanks so much, Erin. I think we're gonna skip some slides and go to the live Q&A. We might take like 2 or 3 questions. Um, yeah, you guys could like, the participants put like questions in the chat or unmute right now if you have any questions to be answered. We might take like 2 or 3.
Hi. So I just wanted to ask, is it possible to get letters of recommendations from teachers that didn't teach you in a subject, but they were maybe in charge of like many of your clubs that you were in? Or does it have to be from a teacher that taught you in something?
At least for my application, it could be an extracurricular teacher. As long as like they're an actual teacher at your school, then it's fine.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question too. Sorry.
Yeah, you could go.
So I know that a lot of like the colleges that even you guys are attending have pre-college prep programs for the summer or over like an academic year, but usually they're very costly. Like you have to pay $2,000 to $3,000 just to attend them. So say if you come from a background where your parents might not be able to afford those programs, but you still want to get a first-hand experience of what it's like to be at that college. Is there like any way that you can? I know like a lot of colleges have made some of their courses online like free, but you can audit those courses. But is there any other way to maybe get a chance to sit in one of the classes or hear a professor talk or maybe access some of the syllabi of a college before you apply?
I didn't do any of those, but I do have friends that did, and they all did it for free. So I know there's for sure programs for people that come from like a low SES background, and we just like don't have access or come from certain high schools that can go for at least like a month or 2 of the summer before the colleges actually start and see what it's like to be there and also kind of foster a community. So I know that definitely exists. And then in terms of online classes and stuff, I know Coursera, there's a lot of like top universities that kind of put their courses on Coursera if you want to get a sense of like what's being taught.
I'll say that.
Oh, sorry. Feel free to reach out to any of us. I'm sure we'd be happy to like tell you some stuff about our schools and maybe show you some of our syllabuses. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
There's also a YouTube channel. I think that the girl who goes to Penn actually, but she's interviewed a lot of people at top schools.
Cynthia
like
Brown. She has an excellent YouTube channel. You should
Yeah,
definitely check it out. She answers a lot of questions that you might be afraid to ask here, but you should definitely just go check it out there.
I just want to add like an extra detail. I definitely will do more research on this, so definitely hit me up with more questions about it, and I will research it for you. And like I have a lot of friends who like are participating in this program, but there is like a thing for Cornell where I'm assuming it's Big Red Ambassador, and essentially the program is for, at least in my school, it's for high schoolers essentially, and it's basically Cornell students who are volunteering to answer a lot of questions, to basically be a semi mentor for you guys leading up to like like before colleges start. I'm presuming you don't necessarily have to be like accepted to Cornell. I'm assuming they're taking like just like anyone who's interested in the school. I definitely would do more research on that, but if that is something you're interested in, definitely look it up. And I have personal friends in that program who I can connect you to as well.
Yeah, actually, on that topic, there's a program called Splash, which I think a bunch of universities have, which is undergrads basically teach classes to high school students. I did it when I was in college, and I would imagine kind of doing something like that not just like exposes you to people, but you also can kind of ask them about like their undergrad experience. So that could be like a roundabout way of doing it.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I think we're gonna stop the live Q&A. Next slide. If all the panelists, if you guys want, you guys could put your emails in the chat, only if you want to. So our participants could maybe ask some more questions that we don't have time to right now, or if we skipped. Yeah. So.
I think it's only letting me send like a direct message to you,
Yeah.
Yeah, me
like
too.
everyone.
It would also be okay if you can just send out our emails in a mass email chain to everyone in this call.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. But yeah, thank you so much for sticking with us, everyone. And make sure to fill out the attendance form link in the chat. But if there's nothing else, thanks for coming. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Lena, for organizing. This was great. I would have definitely appreciated this as a high school student.
Good
Thanks,
luck,
Ranty.
everyone.
Yeah, good.
No, thank you again. Let us know if you ever need anything else in the future.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi everyone.
Bye, everyone. I'm